I call the honourable member Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou anō, tēnā tātou e hui mai ki roto i te whare. It's a source of some regret for me that I wasn't able to speak in the first reading on this debate, because I'd have loved to reminisce about Flipper and Doctor Who, some of those films that I saw in my youth. But, yeah, I did have hair at the time, Mr Parker, yes. I rise now to express some thoughts from my colleague Holly Walker on this debatable motion around the shortened period for Select Committee consideration. Our decision to abstain on the bill itself notwithstanding, the Green Party will support this motion, but not because we're happy with the 7-week Select Committee process on a piece of legislation like this. Rather, we are supporting this motion because the alternative was for the committee to have only 4 weeks to consider the bill, something we consider to be totally unacceptable. And a 7-week process, while far from ideal, is better than a 4-week process, which is why we requested the Minister to extend it as much as possible. It's, I guess, a source of further regret, sir, that this bill has been introduced under urgency, which is a further abuse of process in our view. As Holly Walker noted in her substantive contribution to the first reading, we can see no reason why the Select Committee process needs to be this short, given that we have until the end of October to pass the legislation required before the provisions of the current ban lapse. We certainly recognise the Minister's concern that ensuring that something is passed before then is important, because if the ban were to lapse in October, followed by a period of unrestricted parallel importation, it could be that could give rise to problems that may be difficult to reverse. But I'm mindful also of Trevor Mallard's comments about that, and I'm not sure. I would like to know what those possible unforeseen consequences might be. I guess if we knew what they were, they wouldn't be unforeseen. So it's likely that some form of shortened Select Committee process was always going to be necessary, but we in the Green Party don't see why it shouldn't have been 2 or 3 months rather than a matter of weeks only. It's a good innovation in this current Parliament that we now have debatable motions when the process for Select Committee scrutiny is being curtailed, and that greatly increases the transparency of parliamentary decision-making and requires ministers to actually justify their decisions to curtail the level of parliamentary scrutiny. Or rather, sir, it should. It should require ministers to justify their curtailment of parliamentary scrutiny. On this occasion, I noticed that the minister hasn't yet taken a call, and I look forward to him doing so to explain the reason why that shortened scrutiny is necessary. It still seems to be increasingly common for members to be dealing with bills that have a curtailed process such as this. Recent examples include the Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Amendment Bill, which was given an extremely short Select Committee process of only 2 weeks, and yet has then languished for months since the committee reported back, and the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Bill, which currently stands before the Social Services Select Committee. Very often, Mr Speaker, the consequence of shortened Select Committee scrutiny is a worse bill that actually needs this House to go back and repair errors that were made and could have been avoided in the first place if proper process had been followed. What might not be so apparent to members when we make these rather arbitrary decisions to approve shortened Select Committee processes is that this puts the staff and officials who serve the Select Committee under incredible pressure. This includes Select Committee clerks, report writers and administrators, as well as the officials who are appointed to the committee as advisors, and staff from the Parliamentary Council Office who are faced with the often mammoth task of producing revision track versions of bills with substantial changes in a very short period of time, sometimes only days. This is often invisible to members, but very apparent to the staff affected, and it's not appropriate unless vitally important, which it doesn't appear to be in this case, or indeed, sir, I would say, in the other cases that I've mentioned already in this contribution. Shortened Select Committee processes, of course, also constrain the ability for members of the public and affected stakeholders to have their say on legislation that affects them, and this should also be avoided wherever possible and should be used only as a last resort measure, Mr. Speaker. And in this case, sir, it very clearly is not a last resort situation. In this case, Mr. Speaker, 7 weeks is too short, but it is a lot better than 4 weeks, so the Green Party will, for that reason, support the motion. We wish, however, to have our concerns about the whole process surrounding this bill noted for the record. Nō reira e te whare e hui hui mai nei katia au e kone tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Honourable Trevor Mallard has said, we will be opposing the motion in part because it's been introduced under